Abraham laughed, Sarah laughed, but in the end, God got the last laugh. What does that teach us about faith?
What came to mind for me was the proverb, he who laughs last, laughs best. Have you ever heard that? But then in that one verse, I love it because God has brought me laughter. All who hear will laugh with me. So now that laughter is a different kind. With the Lord, all things are possible. So those promises will be fulfilled even when they seem difficult. And when we're asked to do hard things, the Lord will provide a way. Hello and welcome to this week's Ensigns to the Nations. We'll be talking about Genesis 18 through 23 this week. And what came to mind for me was the proverb, he who laughs last, laughs best. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah,
Okay.
Who gets the last laugh?
Yeah, who gets the last laugh? And the reason this one came to mind is there are several times in this lesson where laughter is brought up. Abraham laughed,
Right.
Sarah laughed, and then we'll learn what one of the names of the prophets actually means, to laugh. So should I go ahead and tell the story now, or do you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so Abraham in chapter 17, which is the chapter just before this segment of lesson for this
Right.
week, was told that he was going to have a child. And that was in chapter 17, verse 17. And it says, Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And
Right.
shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Okay, so he was the first one to laugh. And then in chapter 18, Sarah was overheard these men who were visiting their
Right.
household telling Abraham that they were going to have a son.
Right.
And Sarah overheard it, and she says in verse 12 that Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also? Ooh. And then the response was very significant from the Lord.
Right.
What did he say?
He said, is there anything too hard for the Lord?
Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Exactly. So that is just such a great lesson.
Yeah.
And that is actually the title of this week's lesson. Is anything too hard for the Lord? This is really a story about faith
Yep.
and promises,
Right.
even when things seem impossible.
Right.
It's impossible. How could a 90-year-old have a baby? It seems impossible. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Well, we learn that it's not, right? Because she did conceive.
Right.
Well, and then in Genesis 21:6, after Sarah did have the baby, that promise was fulfilled. Verse 6, Sarah laughs for joy. Now her laughter is no longer in disbelief, in shock as it was before. Both Abraham and Sarah were, I think, laughing out of, sort of disbelief, like shock. Could this be? And then the Lord came back and kind of rebuked them a little bit, don't you think, by saying, is anything too hard for the Lord? Like, you need to have faith.
Reminded
Trust me.
them that everything can happen with the Lord. And faith is a big part of this.
But then in that one verse, I love it because God has brought me laughter. All who hear will laugh with me. So now that laughter is a different kind.
Yeah.
It's one of joy.
Right.
And then just as a reminder, their child, the son that was born, was Isaac.
Right.
And Isaac actually translates to he laughs or laughter. So it's just kind of a fun little part of this lesson to be aware that all of this kind of came around in the end, and just the ultimate, I guess, significance is that transformation of that incredulous laughter that they had at the beginning into the joy of this miraculous birth.
Well, and that's what this part of this lesson is really a lot about, is the test that they had, because they've been told for some time that they're supposed to have a lot of children. And then they never have any children. They never have any children. They never have any children. So their faith is being tested. And of course, we can learn from this because our faith is tested often. Maybe not as long as they had to test their faith. They went for years and decades even having faith that this is going to work. So that's this one thing, that the Lord will keep his promises. And maybe the whole laughter thing works in with this, because we need to have faith, and we need to have joy in this faith that God will complete his promises. He'll do the things that he asks us to do. So I love that.
We've had our own personal experience. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but promises with our own children.
Yeah.
And it's just been such a faith-building experience that when those promises are fulfilled.
Yeah.
And just to have that faith that things will work out, and if you are obedient with those promises that we are given in our patriarchal blessing or by inspiration, that the Lord will fulfill those promises.
Absolutely.
And some of our greatest blessings have come after the fact,
Yeah.
when we have just been patient with it.
Just use that verse. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Every time something happens that that is not working the way you think it should, every single time, your children, maybe they aren't back in the church, and so is there anything too hard for the Lord? No, of course not. This will all happen.
We're locked out. Okay.
Oops. You want to keep talking?
There's a
you want
locked
to start
gate.
talking again? Oh, here it is. So that's one of the tests that we learn about, that Abraham goes through, and this is a long endurance test. Hopefully we don't have to go through those kind of faith tests that take that long. So not long after this all happens, Abraham learns that Sodom is a horrible, evil place, and that God's going to destroy it. What does Abraham say? Well, first of all, my son-in-law Lot, he lives there, his family, so can't we at least find like 50 good people? God says, okay, go ahead, look for them. He doesn't find them. He doesn't find 45 or 40, or what does it go all the way down to?
Yeah, so if I can find 40 righteous people, will you spare the city and not destroy everybody? And God says, okay, yes. And then I just love how the number keeps going down. Well, I'm not sure I can find 50. I'm not sure I can find 40. What about 30?
Right.
What about 20? And then I think finally in the end, if I can find 10, if I can find 10, will you spare the city?
Yeah. So they don't find 10.
No.
They don't spare the city. The Lord pulls Lot and his family out of there. Well, as many as he could possibly get. He didn't get a whole lot, because because his daughters didn't come, because his son-in-laws didn't believe him, and his wife turned around and was turned into a pillar of salt, or whatever that means. It meant she turned back towards what the Lord wanted her to stay away from. The Lord wants us to stay away from the world. He wants us to stay away from all those horrible things that happen. This happened very at the beginning. In the last lesson, we talked a little bit about how Lot set his tent up toward Sodom. That was the first mistake. Instead of having a beautiful window into the world that we can use to strengthen our testimonies, him and his family saw Sodom and what that happened. Sooner or later, they moved to Sodom. After that, they were living there, and then there was people who came to hurt their guests, and so it just went one after another. These poor decisions about letting the world into our lives.
Yeah, and so as they were leaving, they were told to not look back.
Yep.
And of course, we see the artwork and the depictions of that story, starting when we're in primary and as children, and we kind of see her looking over her shoulder and turning into a pillar of salt. And just now, as we look through it, we ponder it and we think about it and we wonder, I don't know that it was really a punishment for her turning her head and looking over her shoulder, as it sometimes is told. It's more like of the heart. Are you willing to let go of those evil things, of those things that you are told to leave behind? And if you don't, there's sort of an outcome for that.
It was her heart that really was turned back.
That's what she was turning back. She wasn't prepared to leave that life and look forward.
It's a sobering reminder that God's mercy is real, because he did have mercy. Abraham said, wait, let's not kill them all. But he did have mercy. He listened to Abraham, but his justice is also important. when wickedness, when fully ripened, brings consequences, and that's certainly a lesson that we have to remember. So, chapter 22 is probably one of the strangest and hardest things for a lot of people to understand, and that's when God asks Abraham to take this one son that they've been waiting for 40 years for, that's a blessing, that's going to bless all of humanity, and go up and do a sacrifice. We don't know how this could even feel, because we've never done it before. Although Abraham had a little bit of experience with this, his father tried to sacrifice him.
So he had experience being on the other end of it. He knew what it felt like to be on the altar and have that knife raised above him.
That's right.
And so I'm sure he had great compassion for his son, realizing what he must feel like.
So we have the faith of Abraham with a little bit of experience, and then maybe that helps him in his faith. We have the faith of Isaac, who probably wasn't just a little kid by then. He was probably a teenager.
Yes.
The faith that he had, this place was like 3 days away, so it was a far walk.
Yeah.
And here they are walking along, and he notices, well, where's the lamb? How's this going to work? And yet he lets his dad do all this stuff, knowing that he has faith that his dad loves him and that they are close and that things will work out. So, scary thing. But of course we know this great test of faith, which was a different kind of a test. Before, this was a test of endurance about them having a child. Now this is more of a test of intensity. And this test was testing the ultimate in faith in God that Abraham had to have. Again, why is that? Well, maybe it's just so that we could know, if Abraham could do that, then we can do it. When we have a test of our faith, hey, I got to pay my tithing, but I also have these bills. What should I do? Well, if Abraham could almost sacrifice his one and only son, then we can probably do this. Whenever these bad things come up, we can figure it out. That's what I think why the Lord decided to do this.
Right. And we know that with the Lord, all things are possible.
That's right.
So those promises will be fulfilled even when they seem difficult. And when we're asked to do hard things, the Lord will provide a way.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we can learn a lot of stuff from Abraham. We're glad that we have this part of Scripture to study. Thanks for being with us today, and join us next time on
Ensigns to the Nations.
What do you think?